Typhlo Ruins is an island that is shrouded in nearly impenetrable darkness. Within that darkness lies a maze of ruins, hidden enemies, and a Hinox holding the key to a shrine located at the heart of this shrouded island. On top of all of this, the isle is surrounded by a bog of deadly mud. The island's shrine itself holds no interior trials. The challenge is reaching the shrine in the first place. There are 120 shrines in Breath of the Wild, and the majority of these shrines rely on the use of one of the four runes: Magnesis, Stasis, Cryonis, and either Remote Bomb. With this set of general principles, it was inevitable that many of the shrines would feel similar. There are, however, a number of very unique shrines, and there is none more so than the Typhlo Ruins Shrine. The Typhlo Ruins Shrine, or if you're being more technical, the Kato Wawai Shrine, has no interior challenge. Similar to many of the shrines tied to shrine quests, upon entering it you have immediate access to a monk who will give you a spirit orb as usual, and a box with some other loot. The challenge of this shrine is getting to it in the first place, and that process was some of the most fun I've had in Breath of the Wild. The beginning of getting to this shrine is just getting into the ruins in the first place. It's not hard to find. It's a medium-sized island covered in trees and shrouded in impenetrable darkness. It's kind of an eye-catcher. The ruins are, however, surrounded by this death mud, with only one bridge leading in on the west side of the ruins. However, you can access the ruins from any side if you can get at sufficient height from nearby landmarks or from the annoying Birdman's gale. Then comes the real challenge. Typhlo Ruins, being shrouded in complete and utter darkness, has no sunlight, moonlight, or any ambient light apart from some tiny glowing mushrooms and the fire keese enemies. With such minimal light, most of this forest island is completely black, and that makes you think about something that you have to think about only a few other times in the game: your light source. There are many sources of light in Breath of the Wild, and in Typhlo Ruins, you have to think about the upsides and drawbacks of each one. These are just the solutions I came up with, so I doubt that this is an exhaustive list. A torch is the most obvious solution, but as there are a number of enemies to deal with in the ruins, including a Hinox, you'll have to do some fighting, and that can obviously be difficult if the weapon you're carrying is a torch. A fire sword or any ancient weapon or shield also works, although these each emit much less light than the torch. If you want to light up a larger area temporarily, a meteor rod does an excellent job, as will several other wands, but this obviously uses up the precious durability of your items. It turns out that Daruk's protection can light up things a little bit as well, although I found myself losing that protection very fast to the wolves, which, being pretty well obscured in darkness, were difficult to deal with. There's also these bird pillars that you can light for fire, for permanent locations to fall back to, and the bird pillars are set up in paths that lead you deeper into the ruins towards the shrine. But while those pillars light up the surrounding area, these are a stationary light source that are only useful in a short radius. My second favorite thing about Typhlo Ruins is how it imbalances the fights against you. Apart from the Hinox, there's only Keese, Stickgoblins, and some wolves in these ruins, all fairly easy enemies to deal with normally. But in the darkness, this becomes a very different challenge. These enemies go from normally trivial to actually difficult. The wolves in particular I found very difficult to deal with, since they try to keep their distance for the most part, staying in the shadows so that you can only barely make out their eyes, and then they leap in for one attack before retreating back into the darkness. It was uniquely spooky. Shooting them with arrows also proved different, as it was not only hard to figure out where they were, what with only being able to see their eyes, but also how far away they were, and I would often overshoot or undershoot. The shrine at the island's center is activated with a sphere that is carried by a blue Hinox. This Hinox can also be a real challenge. Hinoxes are already at least half a challenge, at least on a first playthrough, if for no other reason that they have a decent amount of health and can deal a lot of damage. And if you're like me and often run from high damage attacks rather than try to parry or dodge, it's very easy to get yourself back into a corner. To summarize, the fights in this region were completely unique from anything else I'd encountered in the game, and I loved it. Literally, my only qualm with this area is that there isn't more of it. After finding the one shrine, there's not a lot more to do there. I would have loved if this was like half a region. I wish there were additional shrines or perhaps more side quests in this area, because exploring these ruins and fighting these enemies in complete darkness was one of the most enjoyable parts of Breath of the Wild that I found. Because Typhlo Ruins forces you to think about the game differently.